Hello, magical soul, and welcome to the Awake Revolution podcast. I'm Marie Fleming Grant, and in this podcast, I'm going to be sharing insights, perspectives, stories, and tips, guiding you to drop the baggage, wake up the real you, and revolutionize it all: how you think, how you feel, and how you create, so that you can be all of who you came here to be. Hello, magical soul, and welcome to this week's episode where I am talking about other people's advice. So I have a few things that I feel like sharing on this topic. So you can take my advice or leave it. But really, no, what I want to do with this episode is to just talk around this subject, because when you're in the personal development industry, spiritual growth, whatever you want to call it, wherever you are, there is a lot of coaches, mentors, healers, guides, all sorts of people giving advice, experts, and all of this kind of energy. And I know that in this area, it is so overloaded with information and people's opinions, and there are so many different ways to pretty much do everything. So I just want to expand this topic, open it up, in the hope that if you are tuning into, and I'm sure you are tuning into different messages, this includes my own messages, anyone's messaging outside of yourself, how to kind of decipher when to take advice, when perhaps not to, when definitely not to, and how to navigate through external advice and guidance. So I'm just going to share my own perspectives, and I invite you, as I'm sharing them, and this is what I really invite you to do with all of my podcast episodes and anything you tune into me. If what I share resonates, take it, receive it, apply it in your lives. If it doesn't, then absolutely just listen and let it float off you. And I definitely am not here to convince, persuade anybody on anything, but even when I share very strong beliefs, because I know that I do. So that's just what I want to share with you. So the first thing I want to do is just touch on receiving advice is very different to guidance. So there is a lot of, you may or may not like the word expert. I'm not so keen on it. I don't love the word expert. I feel like, for me, and it's just a kind of an energy thing, to me the word expert feels as if it's saying that the person has reached expert status, kind of top of the ladder, and there's nowhere else to go. And I know from life and my own experience, and even more so recently from my own guides, that there is always more to learn. So I don't know how we can really be real experts in anything. I mean, maybe that's just my interpretation of the word, but that's what it feels like to me. Of course, if you find that the word expert feels good, then you're not going to have this way of thinking, but I just wanted to share that for any of you that do. So there's a difference between kind of advice giving and guidance. So advice is really, what it's saying is, I'm going to share this information and I advise you to take this course of action. It's kind of what I would have done as a lawyer for people. I would say the law states XYZ. So based on your circumstances, for the most optimum outcome for you in this area, I would advise you to take these steps. And that was my role, right? I wouldn't do that now in the role that I'm at and in the work that I'm doing. So how I feel that I am, and I hope that that's received as such, is more of a guide. So I feel that what I share, strongly held beliefs or not, is a guide, because what I feel is that each of us are so aware of what is correct for us and what resonates with us on a soul level. We don't need, it's not advice that we need. I really believe that. I feel like sometimes it's reflecting back that we need. Sometimes it's real, teaching. Now, teaching is different. To me, the energy of teaching is you're learning. You're actually opening and expanding and learning and receiving information from others in the form of teaching. But you're also in that process participating, because you are taking the information and processing it and filtering it through your own experiences. So again, there's more fluidity in that. So with guidance, I feel like it's more expansive. So when someone's trying to advise you, it's difficult. So it can sometimes work out and sometimes not. So what I want to share as well is that the best way I find in my own experience is, and this is what I try and do, because I this is where I sort of get into a funny, what would it be? Funny place with it. It's like if you're stuck with something, or if you're stuck on something, you want to look outside. Like I've done this thousands of times. I'm stuck. What does this person say about this? What does that person? So I want information. I want some perspectives. I'm looking for guidance. And maybe you've done that too. You've looked out there. But what's really important is when you receive something, and it could be advice or guidance or information, you're going to know most of the time, if you're tuned in, you're going to know if that advice, guidance, information feels good in your body or if it feels like it's not quite right for you. That's the way that I tend to approach things now. Now, before I would have done the whole pros and cons, I was very up in my head years ago. I would have seen it as a very logical process. These days, I live differently. I feel differently. So I'm very much more, I use information and I filter it through and I know what my body tells me. So sometimes what this looks like is, let's say I'm tuning into someone's live stream, someone who I admire and I respect in the industry of whatever it is I'm looking at. And let's say they give guidance or advice on a certain area and they say this, do these 3 steps and that's the way. If I receive that, there are times when I can feel straight away that that's just not the correct course for me. And it's not that it's not the right way. I can often recognize and tune in. I'm sure you've had this experience somewhere. It's not that we're saying that advice is wrong or that it's flawed. It's just a recognition that even though it works for them, and maybe that's how they did create this success in this area because they did it that way. But when we receive that and we apply it to our own lives, there's a thing that happens. The more tuned in you are, the more you'll feel this. There's something in our bodies that it doesn't resonate. So for some of us, we feel it in our stomach area. Sometimes it's in the chest, sometimes our shoulders tense up, but sometimes it's our whole body that tenses up. And it's really a great kind of practice to tune into your own cues. Your body's going to give you so much wisdom. So it's an amazing thing to start noticing. Practice, when you hear something that resonates, what does it feel like? When you hear something that is just goes against your whole belief system or how you know is true for you, notice what it feels like, because that's going to be your compass. And that's what I typically use now all the time. So I just invite you, if that feels good, to just check out, because let's make it simple. If advice you receive feels wrong in your body, it's not right for you. Simple. It's a simple kind of process. Now, it's another thing I want to remind you of is that they are not more knowledgeable about you than you. So even though they could apply this rule or this guide to 20 people and it works a treat for them, they are not you. And so the person that is the most knowledgeable expert, if we're going to use that word, on you is you. And it's something I often find myself saying to people in my space or clients or anyone that connects with me, is that you are the expert in you. If there is an expert, it's going to be you, because actually beyond the conditioning and the programming and our confusion sometimes and our lack of clarity sometimes, that's really temporary. Deep down underneath that, we actually do know what we want. We do know what the right moves are. We do know our next step. We actually do know. So the practice really is, how do we start to drop into that, and how do we practice tuning into that? That's the work, right? That's the beauty and the magic and the power that comes from that. And so when we're looking out there for other people's advice, it may or may not tally with our soul's truth, but it takes us away very often. So obviously when you hear someone give you advice or guidance and it resonates, that's because it matches what you already knew inside. So often when I, for example, channel, and I do laser focused channel sessions with people, often, sometimes my guides will share things to open and help and expand and activate people. Very often the messages are very powerful. They move people, but very often it's not that they're giving you information that you didn't actually know. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's clarity on things you just didn't see that perspective. But really, when you drill down beyond anything, it's really always a confirmation. And deep down, you already had that little seed. So, this is how powerful you are, which is why I'm a big advocate for you don't need advice from people. You can take pieces and apply it when you choose. But it's just what I'm talking about here is absolutely look outside and, get guidance and things from people. But I'm talking about when you start to hand over kind of your own power and then you're following advice that you feel isn't right for you. So I'll tell you an example that's kind of coming to me now in the online space. All the experts, as long as I have been online for the last, say, 7 years, when I started looking at all these ways of creating and messaging and all of these things, and you might have heard this, it's all been about niche, or niche, or however you want to say it. But it's all been about the client avatar. And there's a lot of teachings, for example, around really nailing this idea of who do you want to work with? This idea, this avatar, is it a man or a woman? How old is she? If it's a woman, what magazines does she read? What's how many children does she have? What kind of place does she live? And I used to do those exercises and I hated them. And every time I did a training or a course or a program on anything like this, it always used to come down to that. And I used to continuously try and be the good student and follow that way. And because I used to look at people sharing this and I could see that they were successful, I could see that they had clients, I could see that they did this and it worked for them. So I got very, I guess, sidetracked with that. And it's very easy to do. And you might have had that experience yourself. So it was only after a few years when I started to realize that something's got to give here. I'm doing this and it's draining me. There's something in it that just feels so wrong for me. And at first, I didn't trust that voice because I thought, well, I haven't even hardly had any paying clients at that time. I don't know what I'm doing. This person is, all these people are far more advanced and successful than I am. So for me to fly in the face of that advice, is that arrogant? Is that me not learning, me not willing to grow? And sometimes we have that message is if you're uncomfortable with the advice, you're just not willing to expand and you're not, what's the phrase? You're not very coachable. Maybe you've been told that. Maybe you've felt that. You're just not coachable and you're just not being willing enough. And that's a difficult energy. So I just want to open it up for any of you. And I know that this message will reach you if it needs to reach you. And also something to consider in the future, that it's having the courage to just drop the conditioning, other people's ways, and trust that maybe it could be you're here to do it very differently. Many people I connect with, and it's happening more and more and more, are very similar to me. We're here to create for the new earth. We're here to create and impact the world in our own unique way, regardless of what job or work you do. But a lot of people that I connect with, you're all very unique, and you aren't really here to kind of pave your own path like a trailblazer, like a pioneer in some way, especially in the kind of business creativity world. So of course you're going to be someone that's called to step away from the mainstream and the experts advice, and actually, can you have the courage to maybe do it in a way that doesn't quite look like everybody else's? Like, I've only recently discovered this year, as I'm recording this, 2022, that, and I love learning about different modalities. I've never kind of boxed in by them, but this human design was something I came across earlier this year. And when I learned about being a projector in human design, I realized, oh, that is just confirming for me why I do things a certain way and why I cannot, with any of my soul, do the things that perhaps manifestors or generators or whatever can do very naturally. So for me to try and do 9 to 5 hours, which I did do and got incredibly burnt out, for me to do it in the way that a lot of experts will suggest, for example, creating in my business and doing it in this way and that way and that way, I realized none of those things were ever going to resonate with me. And it kind of validated and confirmed for me ah, yes, that's why it didn't resonate in my body. So don't be afraid to step away from maybe, maybe you've even got a mentor right now. I often have conversations with people that are in a coaching program or a mentoring or a a course of some kind, and the mentor, the person leading it, with all the goodwill in the world, they are doing what they feel is good for you. It's not coming from a bad place majority of the time, but they're being taught this way instead of you being allowed to tap into really what's true for you. So just remembering that you are the absolute expert. And if you can start to trust in your own guidance, and imagine if you can still have mentors and guides, of course, because that's I do that with people as well. But it's it's finding a way to be guided by someone that isn't taking you away from your own knowing. I think that's probably the key, because I've worked with people myself. I've worked with people as me being the client who've there's a difference between them kind of showing me a way to do it versus someone who's helping me tap into mine. And there's such a powerful and beautiful difference. So that's the main message. I just want to add a kind of aside to all of this, which may sound like a contradiction, but just open and receive it in whichever way feels right for you. If the advice you receive feels wrong in your body, you can feel it. It just doesn't feel so good. Um, If it feels triggering, now this is a different thing. You may want to tune in. So let's say somebody shares something, a suggestion, advice, guidance, whatever, and you tune in and actually it's not that it just doesn't feel aligned and right for you. It actually feels very triggering. That's a sort of different energy. So on that one, I would suggest and recommend that you tune in for yourself. And this is a bit of a process you might want to just spend some time on and just see if, because it could actually be resistance to what is true. So sometimes you can hear an idea or advice or guidance from someone and you feel that it's not right for you, but it actually feels very triggering. It means very strong in your body. So it could be sometimes, and this is like a tricky little thing, it could be that actually that advice or guidance was the thing for you, but it triggered you because maybe it's fear, maybe it's something you're trying to avoid, maybe it's resistance coming in. So I'm just kind of opening this up a little bit. If you have a very strong reaction, it could be that trigger because there is some truth in there that we want to avoid. And I've definitely done that. So that's okay. It's just part of the journey. It also could be a trigger for something else, reminds you of something that just didn't get processed. So it's a great opportunity for healing and growth. It could also be, when it's triggering, it's revealing to you something deep about your own values here, right? So let's say the advice that you get given is you've got to work out every day. You've got to do an hour's workout every single day. Otherwise, you're just not going to become healthy and fit. You might really feel like, oh, that really doesn't align with your values. So it's very triggering, but it's actually a great thing to actually go further with, because sometimes it's a mirror for us to see something reflected back to us or something that is kind of juicy. So there's a lot of ways to go with this. But if it's not that kind of big trigger that's bringing up stuff, and there's more of a certain feeling coming up, it's often hard to describe. It's often more of a gut feeling, that kind of knowing. Pay attention to that, because that's most likely your soul saying, this is not the way. This is not right for us. This is not how we want to do it. So I just want to open space to this. So I hope that has given some ideas and just helped you just open up this and breathe some light into it if you feel that you're needing this, because other people's advice is a tricky one. Because at the same time, I'm not saying that we don't get to listen, because that's the other thing. We want to always be learning. We don't want to be stuck in this way of feeling like we always know what's best. We always know what's best, because the way I'm describing it, and I hope I'm describing it in a way that this makes sense. So any questions off the back of this, feel free. But it's like there's a difference in the energy. So if the energy is within us is saying, I know everything there is to know about this. I do not need to hear anything. I do not need to learn anything more. Just check that out, because sometimes that is a little bit of a, what would that be? That's more of a maybe a rigidness. And it's a really helpful thing to be able to always be in a state of learning. Like I feel like every time I teach something, I'm a student again, because I'm teaching it and then I'm learning it at another level. So I feel like I'm always the student and I'm always, as much as I am, the teacher. So you can have both roles. So we don't want to get into this. What's coming to me is this energy of sticking your fingers in your ear, going la 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 la. I don't want to hear anyone else's anything. That's not what I'm trying to convey. But it's more about open your mind, open your eyes, your ears, your heart, your soul. Take in whatever you're drawn to, and listen to perspectives, watch trainings, go on programs and courses if they move you, if you feel called to, but do it in a way that allows you to come back continuously to yourself. And I often ask myself the question, what does this feel like? Often I can just feel it just happens. But if I don't know, I'll say, what does it feel like? I'll just check out whether this feels expansive and contracted, or does it feel restricted? What's the energy in your body? And your body will never lie. Your body is the most intuitive, wise instrument, vessel that you have. So it's an incredible source of information and guidance. So you really can use your body as a compass, and your soul is guiding you all the time, and your higher self, right? So it's a tricky one, because it's kind of just getting the balance right. So I hope that has just opened up this new way of thinking, perhaps, or confirmed what you already feel. And I guess the main message really, even though it's sort of gone around the houses a little bit back and forth, the main message is really, courage to trust your own knowing in amongst a very noisy world, and a place with lots of opinions, lots of views, lots of ways of doing things. Learn and grow and borrow bits, of people, the bits that resonate, but combine them with, well, what do you know is true and what feels good in your body? And then you can leverage other people's wisdom, because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can receive other people's wisdom who've gone through certain things ahead of us. That's why they've done it, and then they can feed it back to us. And then we take that, receive that, but we really use it to guide ourselves. And I think that's the most powerful way to kind of navigate through this crazy life / business / creative journey. So I hope that helps. I send you so much love. If you have any questions off the back of any of that, feel free to get in touch, reach out, share your thoughts. Oh, and I've realized you can leave a rating for podcasts. I am so great with tech. So feel free, if you would like to give this podcast a rating. I think there's a button that you can do that somewhere, wherever you're listening to this, on whichever platform. That would be most helpful. But yes, have a great rest of your day whenever you're listening to this, and I will speak to you very soon. Take care, magical soul. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I do hope you enjoyed it. Just to let you know, if you wish to reach out anytime to me with any questions or comments or feedback, I would love to hear. So have a look in the description of this episode, and you'll find all the links to any of my groups, my website, my other social media platforms. So feel free to get in touch. Thank you so much again, and I will talk to you very, very soon.